Tasking: cattle mutilation by non-human beings on Earth. The remote viewer is to observe and describe the target and include the following insights. Who and or what does this? In what ways is this performed? What is the intended purpose of this? So right out of the gate, I'm going to say that this session felt extremely scrambled. When receiving data on one sense, other senses would chime in. For example, exploring audio evoked a visual data packet, and using smell evoked aromas that made no sense for the target. Many occurrences all connected to a central source like a feather. Visual data of a floating sun above me, a large column descending from above and smashing into a large living creature in front of me. The same creature seen from a side view of its face with its eye missing. Within this session, there's a repeated use of symbolism of a flat, puffy jelly that eventually changes color after being studied and affected by a separate source outside the jelly. The jelly changes from green to blue and felt symbolic for a large group of people, possibly us. As the color changes, so too does the way the society functions. Conflict and disorder cease, and a level of daily ease begins to ensue. Most, if not all, of the society are content with this, and once this happens, there's no turning back. Overseeing this process is a non-human intelligence constantly monitoring these beings, and at the right moment in time, they effect this switch from green to blue. The overseers are embodied by a word that came up during the session as Poirot. Poirot refers to Hercule Poirot, a fictional character created by Agatha Christie. Poirot is a retired Belgian detective who's known for his brilliant deductive reasoning skills and meticulous attention to detail. His personality exudes refinement and sophistication. It's as if the society that this happens to is grateful for the new ease of life after this, but in reality, it was also a way for the overseer to gain more control by crafting a streamlined system that the society will always adhere to because it makes life easier and better, while making the overseer's abilities to observe much easier as well. Within this is a hint at this process being cyclical, like the society keeps changing over time, and each time this is kicked off by the overseers as needed. At some point in the distant future, the society reaches a point of advancement where the overseers are somehow no longer part of the picture, and the society lives in harmony with transparency and an efficient kind of interconnectedness. All members of said society have access to all resources, and where there was conflict and disagreement among society members previously, that no longer exists. Once the jelly changes from green to blue, it eventually changes once more to transparent. At this time, the society ceases to feel human and feels more like a hive mind, or like a structured, seamless programming code, carrying out intention as efficiently as is possible, just like a program. The society is in agreement of this, as was shown by the contrast in how it no longer had strife. Each member had access to everything any other member did. The society was 100% transparent, connected, and without feeling. The society felt like it was building something with its own consciousness, which showed up symbolically as a column or tower. They were building something literally using the power of each other as almost one thing or being. They were separate from any other kind of life while doing this, and certainly were no longer overseen by anything else. If I were to describe this society using an example from the current population, I would ask you to imagine a group of individuals who freely give up any previous individuality in exchange for access to all knowledge as quickly as possible. These members would be looking for the chance to build something unique to consciousness, to be godlike, but not for power. Instead, they build something that transcends what most or all other beings are busy doing elsewhere in the known universe. This society is forming something perfect, like a blockchain that is free from outside influence, governance, and so on. However, the height of the column or tower did not extend to the total possible height in my visual field. At some point it stops. They stop, at a precise moment in time, before another layer of themselves could grow. It's truly a seamless end befitting their own style. Target 8437. Initial data packet, something floating down very slowly from top to bottom. Grabbing it, sort of like plucking a feather out of the air. Expanding it. So first category focusing on is symbolic, and the symbolic imagery that I get is like a feather, except the tines of the feather are separate, not necessarily touching, and there's a strange movement to them. It reminds me of many things that are connected to a central branch, like a feather or a tree, for example, that then branch out away from the main source. Anything else for symbolism? Sticky. Each particular branch is sticky, and there are sections of each branch that are bulbous. The shape symbolically is very alien in nature, very different, sort of an olive green color to it. Anything else for symbolism? I'm now seeing one of the arms drying out and the color changing, sort of yellowing. And I'm just being shown the section between the two bulbous points, sort of in the middle half of it. And I'm being shown a flattening of this arm. Kind of reminds me of seaweed. Okay, anything else for symbolism? No? Great. Moving on to how I feel about this. Emotionally feel. Feels good. Feels natural. Organic. Anything else for feeling? Emotional feeling. I'm just visualizing myself merging with whatever this is, sort of bringing it up into the area of my chest to feel it out emotionally and to blend with it for a moment. To me, it feels like a small life form, like a frog or something I'm reminded of, just kind of holding it up to my chest. Cool. That's it for that part, so let's move on. What was the initial data packet again? Oh yes, something floating down slowly. Okay, let's physically explore it. Let's touch. Our first sensation will be touch. Okay, with touch, 360 degrees around me, there's a line directly in front of me that goes vertical, sort of like a pole shape. Let me explore that. Okay, it's more like a wall. There's two sides to it. My left hand is on one side of it, my right side on the other, and it's difficult to pass through with my hands going through. The feeling is like it's more solid towards the ground and stays solid at about chest height. And then as it reaches about head height, it begins to arc up, kind of up and away from me where I can't touch it anymore unless I issue myself a movement command. Cool, so initial impression with feel is sort of in a flat arc shape, and I'm on the outside edge of it. Let me listen now and see if I hear anything at the site. I want to make a note here. I used to just listen for auditory stimulus, but now I realize that when I'm listening, I'm also receiving data packets that can be brought forth and opened up for audio. So I've got one now. Let me zoom into it. This data packet is flat in shape with sort of a shovel head at the end of it, like the shape of a shovel, except the metal part at the end is much wider, but it's all completely flat and it spreads out like oil over water. There's an amber color. It has a luminosity to it. This is all just for the data packet for audio, oddly enough. There's a lot of visual stimulus for this audio packet. That's so interesting. I'm going to explore it now. Movement command, asking myself, what does this audio remind me of? So there's two layers to the sound that this target is emitting. One is sort of a static white noise sound, and the other is a repeating sort of rhythmic pattern over and over again. And that was manifesting visually with the data packet as sort of ripples over this 2D flat surface. I don't know how else to describe that. I almost feel like I'm getting visual data about the audio data packet. Visually, it reminds me of water on like a pond with the sun shining down, but like kind of a golden colored sun. Okay, I'm not getting anything else for audio. What other senses do I have? Smell. Let me smell it. And I should note, as I'm doing this, I'm getting visual data packets coming to me that are unique for each sense. So smell was this weird sort of like a thing that swung down from directly above and in front of me on a line that's there now for me to open up and smell. So let me do that. Very pleasant smell, almost floral. If I were to describe it with color, I don't know why my brain is doing this, but I'm going to go with it. My brain wants to describe everything that it's getting using its other senses. So the smell that I'm getting would be described like soft purples, whites, and pinkish hues. Soft, delicate, yeah, let me word map this. Natural, nature, floral. It's a good smell. It's subtle, and it's energy giving. It feels good to smell it. All right, taste. I'm reminded of something, no data packet this time, but I'm just reminded of like if I were to lick, this giving very amphibian vibes, like I'm standing in a lake or a body of water and I'm like licking the bottom of it where like all of the silt and debris and decaying organic material is. Tastes green, vegetal. What other senses do I have? Oh, let's do visual now. Is there a visual data packet for this? Cool, that came down like a 3D glasses, like a screen in front of me, and it just placed on my bridge of my nose. All right, let's look through these. What do we see? Got a visual flash of what looked like a flamingo in color and in texture, like that soft whitish pink color. It's pretty. What else? Okay, data packet for visual is a big green flat blob that's sort of sliming its way down my visual screen in front of me from top to bottom, and it takes up the entire visual space. I don't know if this is imagination, but I got a very fast visual flash of like a riparian ecosystem, like a lake. But that's too connected to the logical thought process I'm having. It was too clear, so I'm going to disregard that as AOL and move forward with next visual. The data packet reminds me of like a green jelly. Did anyone ever hear that band? That Seattle grunge band? Green, it was called Green Jelly, right? Green Jello, Green Jelly. All right, let's open this packet up. What is this? This jelly thing. Putting my hands out in front of me, it's as if I'm holding a sheet cake of this jelly, looking down into it now. I'm going to embody this sheet cake jelly thing really quick. Complex, interconnected. What one thing does on one side of it affects things on the other side of it. All right, let's break this down. I'm going to start with symbolic, because I'm already there, so let's stay in symbolic for a moment. Interesting. I'm seeing something like a radar, like the radar that moves in the circle on the screen, going through the jelly, or like being emitted, pulsing through it actually, like a satellite does. So it's like a green laser line that is scanning through the sheet cake green jelly thing. I'm embodying, and this is what I do symbolically. I am moving my head now left to right, slowly and methodically, over and over, repeated process, scanning the green jelly with my green laser light that shines forth, and somehow makes this green even brighter. The green is a very dull green, but the laser light coming from me is very, very bright. Within the laser light are data packets, like numbers, binary, ones and zeros, data coming in. So it's as if when I embody this, I am over and over and over looking at whatever the green jelly is symbolically, and I'm taking in data about it over and over and over again. I feel like I'm moving my head like a camera would do systematically. Cool. Anything else for symbolism with this before we move on to the next? Last thing symbolically is that I feel like I'm reminded of like CCTV camera, but way up high above it all. I have full access to view everything about this green jelly sheet cake thing. And I do. I'm constantly monitoring it. Okay, Poirot, P-O-I-R-O-T, Poirot. Something's coming through a word. Hold on. So, still in symbolism land, and I'm being shown this camera type device up high. It's small but incredibly powerful in what it can do, and it's taking the shape of like an eagle's beak, pointed at the front, aggressively pointed, and its coloration is sort of white, and it's extremely sleek and modern, and to me dull. It's lifeless. It has no feel to it other than being like a machine in nature or like a piece of hardware. But it's like a bird scanning a field left and right over and over again, looking down its nose at these things that it's scanning. Okay, anything else symbolically? All right, last symbolism, and then moving on is it is rare that any particle that makes up the green jelly pan sheet cake is different. Occasionally there are some outliers that are like these red dots, like pepper flakes here and there. What happens when my green laser goes over those? It's not good. It's sort of like, wow, interesting. The color of the laser changes from green to like sort of a red. It's an aggressive color change. And when I'm embodying this beak-shaped thing, it's like I don't like the flakes that stand out amongst the green. And so when I see them, I do my protocol, I notify, and I have an impulse to want to cut them out like they're like a blackhead or a pimple or cancer. When I embody this thing, it does not like those, and that's part of what it scans for. All right, last call for symbolism. Anything? Okay, the sheet cake now changed from green to blue. And now that it's blue, there are these sort of white dots in it here and there, still in symbolism apparently. Okay, but now that these are blue, now that the jelly is blue, the beak-shaped camera thing does not move. It's not emitting a laser light. It's still, like it's been turned off. There's an energy to the blue. Yeah, okay, so I'm being drawn to go to the blue jelly sheet cake thing. All right, let's start with symbolism. This feels political. So it feels like there's a tipping point, and then all of a sudden the whole sheet cake jelly thing is blue with some like little white dots in it, but overall blue. Is this whole session going to be symbolism? I'm never running out of data for symbolism here. That's okay though. I feel like the blue is symbolic for a large group of people. This feels political now, and it feels as if there was a tipping point which changed the jelly from this overall green color to now a blue color. Cool. So there's sort of a stopping point there, so I'm done with symbolism, but I'm still in the blue thing. Now I'm going to move on to emotion. How does it feel to be in the blue jelly sheet cake thing emotionally? I feel like I'm in an echo chamber of ideas. Like there are tens of thousands of different people sort of brainstorming, and I'm reminded of the drawings in like Sunday cartoons in the newspapers of caricatures of people. Everyone's talking right now, and that's what the blueness embodies. It's like everyone's abuzz with these ideas that are all very much in line with the blueness of this, and it feels progressive. It feels good to me. It feels innovative. Let's do a mind map with words. All right, from innovative, what do we have? We used progressive already. Dynamic, enslave, hegemony. I don't even know what that word means. Empirical, eschua, or escheance. Issuance? Is it issuance or eschua? I don't know. I'm going to say both. I don't know what those are. Issuance. Immortality. It's interesting. I'm being brought to this sort of central part of the blue jelly cloud thing, and it's sort of the issuance. Oh, is that one of the words? It's the issuance of an energy that sort of electrifies or buzzes this whole thing. Everything's a buzz. And it's coming from this main point that sort of presses in through the rubbery, jelly-like surface of this blob thing, this jelly sheet cake. And it comes in and it electrifies and energizes everything within the blue blob. And it has 2 points, 2 figureheads that are poking up the most, sort of like the shape of a, like that thing you use when you're barbecuing and you stick it into the meat to turn it. It's like a fork, but it only has 2 tines. So it's like that, but they're not poking. Ooh, this is interesting. They're not poking through the veil of the blue jelly sheet cake blob, but they are pushing into it from outside. They are external in nature with their issuance, with their effect on the overall blue jelly thing. They come from outside of it. Okay, why is this significant? Okay, they're different, they don't belong, but because they're so in the middle of the the jelly, the blue jelly, nobody notices that they're different because they came in pushing through the side of it, so they look blue just like everyone else. But they're not. Okay, so let me focus on them for a moment. I'm not following my own form now because I feel like the aperture has changed. I don't need to now. I'm just going with what comes. Is this one or two? So there are two issuances of influence. I feel like I'm in a Dr. Seuss book. That are external in nature, but they work together as one. They are a two-person team affecting change in this big, like, blue jelly thing. What change are they eliciting? Are they issuing? Wow, I just saw... So earlier, when I mentioned that the jelly went from green to blue, it happened so fast, but now I'm being shown from their perspective how their influence... it's like dominoes. It's like all the cells that make up the jelly thing. One tips over to knock into the next one beside it, and so on, until the entire jelly cloud is all blue. Interesting. But going back from this would not be nearly as easy. So this feels like now a system or an overall agreement of sort of a one-way. And everyone's committed to it, and even the ones who wouldn't be committed to it are now still very much a part of it, and you can't really go back. It's like a door that closes on a way. Okay, do the barbecue time things stay in the jelly? I do see them leaving. They are dark colored in nature. Where do they go? So after this effect occurs, they then move down, around, and up above it and continue to monitor. So embodying them, I'm back in a monitoring position. Testing? Okay. Where were we? Sorry, I had to let my cat out. Oh yeah, they're above it now. The jelly is blue. They're watching. Now there's two of them. I'm getting this visual imagery of like... Do you guys remember the awesome movie, The Dark Crystal? God, that movie was so cool. God, Jim Henson was cool. The Skeksis, how they had their long faces. Was it the Skeksis? I think it was, like the bad guys, and they had their like beak faces that were long and narrow. So I'm seeing like two Skeksis up above, kind of like how that camera thing was, but now there's two of them, and their skin is like sort of a brownish color. So the overarching theme I'm getting here is that these are maybe beings that evoke change and new cycles, and then once each cycle begins and shows an assurance of issuance that it will continue, they then kind of bow out gently. They unpoke from the sides of this thing, come out and around, and then observe from above until the next interaction is necessary. They're very different from whatever the green jelly symbolizes, maybe humanity or people. Fucking archons and their tricks. That one's for you, Dave, too. Cool, so it stops there. Wow, I haven't even begun to trace the ideogram yet. So hopefully this wasn't just AOL land. Let's actually play with the ideogram. Target 8, 4, 3, 7. Alright, so I get a line to the right, and then a big jumbled mess, like a ball of yarn, to the right of that, and then it swoops down, decidedly, and then another smaller kind of ball of yarn, and then down and to the right. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but my ideograms mean nothing. There's no language of them. I don't use certain shapes in them to denote things other than what my intuition tells me in the moment. But so let's go into the first complex rat's nest of a ball of line here on the ideogram. Alright, so initial impression is very complicated, not much uniformity or order to it. I feel like saying that it's something that I feel would need to be addressed, and that I don't like the chaos of it. Yeah, it reminds me of a bunch of like jagged lines that are not very well Like they're all interconnected because they have to be, not because they want to be. Like they're tied in and not together. And none of the, it's like one piece of string, but each section identifies differently. And because it's tied up in such a knot, you can't see on one side the perspective of the other. So no sections of this ideogrammic line are in agreement with like how things should be. Symbolically speaking, you can't cut out a single piece of string in this wadded up knotted ball, because if you do, you cut the whole string because it's all one string. Though there are bits of this string that would want to do that and may have tried. Again, I'm doing my best to alleviate myself of political overtones. Many sections of this have felt political in nature, but I'm just going to AOL that as political. Yeah, it just reminds me of being in a hall or big room with a bunch of people just yelling at each other. All right, so I'm going to leave that part of the ideogram now and travel to the next. How about the line between them? It's very thin, almost glassy. They're barely connected on the ideogram. The first jumbled tangled up ball, which is bigger than the second one, which is smaller, and the line between them is it's Gossamer. It's almost nothing. It's like a spider web. Emotionally, it feels fragile, like the connection between these two could break at any time, and that it's also crucial and vital that it stay connected. Again, visually, or maybe symbolically, I'm seeing this thin spindle of like glass, like fiber optic cable, but it's real thin, like spiderweb thin. So let's go to the second jumble on the ideogram here. Let's talk about this. Let's first do symbolism. Well, apparently we're doing emotion. Maybe instead of me dictating if it should be symbolic or emotional or tangible, I'm just going to feel what it is, and then I'll go from there. So this has a feeling to it, and the first feeling is this is significantly different than the first ball. This is clearer, where the other one was muddled. This one is clear. It's sort of like a ball of glass. Like this is all just figurative speak, but if a glass blower could blow a like really long, thin glass line and then kind of wrap it around itself before it cooled too much, when it was still kind of liquidy, and then let it cool and dry, you can see right through it. It's all clear. It's very well interconnected. It is all extremely uniform and similar, whereas the previous larger ball in the ideogram was not. Something significant about the transparency of this. Kind of reminds me of like how blockchain is like that. Like anything you do on it is irreversibly, like historically, remembered forever, so you can't lie about it. Like there's a permanent record of it, so it's like perfectly honest. Okay, what does this do? This glass, see-through, coherent, uniform section of the ideogram. What is the significance of this, literally? I'm not getting anything, so I think I'm going to look at it from a different angle here. Let's stay in, this feels like an intangible. So, I know this will be fun. I would like to embody this second ball, this transparent freedom of movement. I feel as though like my body has like many arms, like in Spirited Away, the dude in the boiler room, how he's got like a million arms. I feel like that. Whatever this is, when I embody it, has so much more movement and fluidity than the previous knotted ball. Like everything's connected within it and talking to each other within it. Backwards, forwards, sideways. There's like almost like a quantum computing sort of aspect to this, where like it's like a three-dimensional grid of dots, for example, and they're all interconnected, and dot A1 in column row 1 can directly, transpose data through the grid using the most efficient means possible, and all of the nodes in the grid can all communicate with each other freely. I think that the transparent, clear glass-like nature of this is trying to tell me that this is a system that makes a lot more sense than the previous one. in that everything is extremely efficient and interconnected. Like there's no hiccups to it. It is like the way to go. So what's interesting symbolically is that it is also kind of a knotted up wad of stuff, just like the other thing was. So symbolically, this is trying to tell me something. This is trying to tell me that it's a system, just like the other thing is a system, but this one works a hell of a lot better. And there's not, chunks of thread or string trying to kill other chunks of thread or string. It's all uniform. How would our two Skeksis guys feel about this new system? What do they have to say about it? They feel really far away now. Like they're not part of this. They're not allowed. They're not even here. They're just a memory. Is it showing me a time thing? Am I in the future when I'm on this section of the ideogram, the clear ball? It does feel that way. Because the visual that I got was them existing, but like kind of floating away from me in my proprioceptive. Last thing to note about this is it now changed from a jumbled ball to sort of like a vertical pillar of like ice or glass. Still transparent, but it's not jumbled now. It's like, right, symbolically, what is symbolic of that? What does that mean? What is the literal interpretation of this symbolism? It's building on itself, onward and upward, and it's found an even more efficient way. AOL AI. It's huge now. And it's taken on a completely different shape than it was before. The knotted up ball was sort of its initial, like, getting on its feet, but then once it's up and running, it grows tall, is completely solid. It's not even knotted anywhere. It's like the most streamlined, efficient system. All right, so there's symbolism of like if you shined a light through one side of it, all molecule parts of it would receive that light instantaneously, no matter if they were one particle away from where the light was emitted, or like even if they're on the absolute other side of the thing. What is the literal meaning of that? Accessibility, all parts within the system are equal in their abilities and connection. This sort of reminds me of, I don't remember what it was called, but Richard Feynman talked a lot about how Einstein talked a lot about how spooky action at a distance, where one particle would be, entanglement, would be entangled with another particle, and they could both be separated once entangled, at any distance, and what you do to one, the other does instantaneously. That's what this is. Interesting. And I'm just receiving a knowing now. This is like a sentience, a clairsentience of each particle within the ice column can act independently, but ultimately they all move in sync in the long run. Interesting. I'm going to take this now into a 3D proprioceptive tactile space. Be back in a minute. All right, so started out in my 3D space and got this large shape that resembled something like a big whale, but was instantly kind of zoomed in on like where the eyeball is, or the corner of its mouth, where there's like an opening that's like a pivot point that can like move or open, sort of like the edge of like a clamshell, it opens and closes. So I'm right there, and let me just become passive and let my subconscious paint this, and I'll report what I see. Large column coming straight down from top to bottom, slamming down, sort of like I'm beneath the legs of a giant spider. Is this literal or symbolic? Let's do literal. Subconscious, can you show me a literal, visual, spatial representation of this per the tasking and only the truth of it? Cool, that was beautiful. So I got sort of a wall unrolling like a sleeping bag from top to bottom diagonally at about 45 degrees, maybe 30, and the texture of it, of this unrolling sleeping bag, was like mesh, reminding me of like screen material. Is this the whole thing or just part of it? So visually, this thing that unrolled itself was flat, but at the end of it, so it was after unrolling downhill, so to speak, it started to slowly be pulled up at the top, and the bottom parts of it were not as uniform. They were flat, but they reminded me of like sections of it kind of looked like tentacles, or like sort of these like, I don't know, these arms that like hung out and like dragged across the ground as it was pulled up, this sort of ramp shape, like netting on a whaling boat or something like that. Anything else visually and literally? So I'm getting like octopus, like the little suckers on their arms are on this netting material, but especially the ends of it. Interesting. I feel like I'm underwater looking up now at the surface of the water that's rippling above me. It's a trip in this 3D proprioceptive space. It's like I fell into a pool and I'm looking up. Do I belong down here under the water? Well, I'm just getting all kinds of AOLs of like underwater things like octopus and squid and things like that, so I'm just going to state AOL on those. Anything else for this proprioceptive space? Okay, data packet within the space sort of looks like a giant beach rock, except it hinges and opens, so I'm going to move towards that. What is this? Again, that word, Poirot, Poirot, it's like another language. Whatever this data packet is, it's now kind of rolling back and forth over and over again, left and right, left and right. And it opens now like a book, and it releases a blinding amount of light and energy from it, with this sort of black central dot in the center of it, in the foreground of it. And behind this thing is just a flat plane of energy being released straight up. Like it reminds me if you could see the particles leaving a satellite dish or something. But this is like a flat plate of energy behind it, emitting intense amounts of light and energy. Zoom in on the thing though. What's the thing in the foreground? This sort of dot thing. Flying along in a desert now. Above the desert, moving forward towards the thing. The thing feels like a mechanical, flying, structural craft, engineered, like out in the desert. Is the light on the flat plane supposed to be like the heat or the light rays bouncing off the desert sand? When I move in towards the thing, it's the only part of this that's blurred out and vague. I feel like I'm at some, like, Star Wars-esque, kind of odd metallic, sheer vertical wall with designs on it. The color is odd for metal. It's like a black silver. It's like etched. It's not smooth. The grooves on it run really deep, at least a finger's width. I'm having a hard time getting through it and inside of this thing. This is interesting. I don't know what this is. I feel like now I'm encountering what reminds me of like just a giant brain on a stem with one eye looking at me inside this thing. Is this on a microscopic level, or give me a sense of scale here? It feels like something about my own height. But it's like this creature that's sort of like the body of a snake, except it's about as like the shape of an eel, but it's fleshy colored, soft skin, almost like a fleshy spine. At the top of it is just this head. It's like this big brain with a single eye. It's looking right at me. Oh man, how does Ray say that in Ghostbusters when Slimer's at the end of the hall? That's how I feel right now. He's like, it's looking at me, Ray. It's looking right at me. Hello, you're so beautiful. It's not really. I come here out of respect, the sense of curiosity. I'm remote viewing a target, and somehow you're part of it. With your permission, may I ask you, to provide me any and all information that is truthful for this target. I feel like it rushed over to me, not in a bad way, but like to share something with me. Its mind works so different than mine, though. Like, I feel like it's bending my mind. Like, it's trying to help me bridge across time. So it's like part of me is here at the target, and then another part of my mind is being bent and warped to some far other space. Actually, more than one space. Wow, this is interesting. I've never experienced this, so I feel like I'm being... Like, the part of my mind that's already displaced viewing this target is now being folded like a taco. And this thing is like assisting that. So I'm being shown something like a star, and it's like a sun. It's emitting high energy particles. And that's at one point of the taco. Okay, so that's here. It's like on the right side. What is the left side of the taco pointing to? Okay, the left side of the taco is connected to the black metallic thing. And the right side of the taco is this star. And what's the connection here, friend? Observance? This is cool. Now my body is inadvertently leaning forward. Like I'm losing my balance a little bit, and I want to fall forward into this thing. It's like sucking me in. Wow, this is groovy. So cool. I feel like I'm a taco, space taco. And the closer I get to this thing, the more I want to speed up in my folding towards it. AOL black hole. Interesting. Oh, was the thing in the desert like a black hole? And I'm communing with it like it has its own consciousness? Because that's what this feels like. Like it's sentient, but it's so alien. Not alien, but like it has a consciousness, but it's so different than anything I've ever experienced that has consciousness in it. It has a consistency and a hardness to it, and an ancient quality. Dude, whatever you are so beautiful. Thank you for letting me experience with you. Can I just merge with you for a minute and learn about you? Absolute stillness. Timelessness. Wow. Wow. I'm trying to say more than just wow. What does it feel like physically? Bendy. Everything is bendy. Bendy and swirly, plasma-y. Wow. Why is it so dark here? I swear to God, I'm at a black hole. So as I've embodied this, and as I try to like push out and away from it, it's very hard to do. Alright, what else is significant about this? Interesting. I'm getting this visual of like, there are these sort of superstring-like things floating around in this empty black voidness, and each of them is a reality, and they all vibrate a little bit differently, and they're all just kind of floating through each other, amidst each other, and as they sort of intertwine and pass through one another, there's this sort of charge, like ionization, or like very subtle impression that they make upon one another. They remind me in shape of like smoke rings. You know how smoke ring, you blow a smoke ring in a bar and like it over time like bends and gets this sort of weird shape as the air currents pull it apart? That's what's happening to each of these. But they can pass through one another, and within each one is like an empirical nature that is different from each other one. This is so freaking cool. Like I feel like I'm in a space where like realities are born. Okay, well I could stay here forever. Since you're sentient, what is something regarding the tasking of this target that I would regret not sharing with listeners that you can tell me or share with me? Wow. So instantly my perspective shifted, and I was allowed to sort of look in 360 degrees from this and outward, and it's just an endless sea of these multicolored, different shaped sort of smoke ring things, all slowly moving like jellyfish in this void forever in all directions. And there's a significance. Any part of any of these reality smoke rings that you access gives the entire truth and blueprint for every other part of itself and every other smoke ring. Or in other words, like, without getting too heady, it's sort of like how a hologram works, or lasers, where any particle of light encoded into it can give the blueprint for every other particle of light within it. So if you access data from like one point, it'll say the same thing as accessing the data from any other point in that hologram. Wow. Does this connect back to the ice column thing? I feel like the dark metallic thing is like nodding at me. Yes, like I got it, I got something. There's like a full circle thing here going back to that spooky action at a distance quantum entanglement concept where everything is accessible from any point of itself anywhere, and there's distinction, but it's all really just part of one big thing. Oh my god. I feel like, so if each smoke ring is its own reality, I'm talking beyond like a universe in size, the culmination of all of these things floating like jellyfish together can make up just one cell of another larger smoke ring. God, I feel small in this moment. Well, my legs are hurting from standing. I'm going to ask if there's anything else that I would regret not sharing about this target while I'm here, per the tasking. So, yeah, just the perspective that, I might look at like the side of a lizard's head at its eye and define it as being that's the eye of a lizard, but in reality, somehow it's also not. It's everything else. It's also a flower petal, a photon, antimatter, thought, urine, a particle of an umbrella. It's everything. I feel like I'm seeing like the long-term dance of every single particle that ever is or ever will be, and how every single particle will shift and dance over an infinite timeline to become everything else in time. And in that sense, everything is one, and time doesn't exist, because over a long enough timeline, everything becomes everything else. And what's the point of this? Play, to grow, to see, to feel, to dance and laugh out loud by life, by living. Interesting. Wow. I think I'm going to end it here, guys. I'm too curious to wait and add to the session. I gotta know what the hell this is.